So let's now have a look at acids, alkalines, and redox reactions. So acids and alkalines are on the opposite ends of the pH scale, and they combine to form water, which is neutral. So acids are substances that form H+ ions, so hydrogen ions, when they dissolve in water, and that's what we call an aqueous solution. And alkalis are substances that form hydroxide ions, which are OH-, and when they dissolve in water, which we call an aqueous solution, that's when those hydroxide ions form. And alkaline is a type of base. And when you're measuring using a pH scale, the acidity and alkalinity of a substance can be measured using a scale that goes from 1 to 14, and all of the pHs that are that are less than 7, so from 6.99999 down to 1, they're all acid, and everything over 7, so 7.0000, keep going until you get to 1, all the way up to 14, they're all alkaline. And if you've got a pH of 7, that is something that's completely neutral. So if we think about recapping some of that, which of these are true of alkalines? So remember, the pH has to be more than 7, and they form hydroxide ions when they dissolve in water. Remember, hydroxide ions are OH-. Now, acids and alkalines are the opposite ends of the pH scale, and they combine to form water, which is neutral. Another example of something which is neutral would be the blood running around your body. So oxidation and reduction reactions are important types of reactions that we need to know about in chemistry. So oxidation reaction involves gaining oxygen. So for example, when a metal reacts with oxygen, a metal oxide is produced, and that's an example of an oxidation reaction. So for example, magnesium reacting with oxygen will give you magnesium oxide. And a reduction reaction involves losing oxygen. So for example, when a metal oxide loses oxygen to return to its atomic form, so just the metal. So for example, iron oxide can be reduced by carbon monoxide, and that will produce iron and carbon dioxide. So the iron's gone from iron oxide, it's lost oxygen, and it's just come out of the reaction as just iron. Therefore, we can say it's a reduction reaction. So a recap of an example of an oxidation reaction would be sodium plus oxygen going to sodium oxide. It's been oxidized because the sodium has gained oxygen in the reaction. And an example of a reduction reaction is when a metal oxide loses oxygen and the metal returns to its atomic form. Now, we can think of oxidation and reduction reactions in a slightly different way. So oxidation can also be thought of as gaining oxygen, and reduction as the loss of oxygen. But we can also think about oxidation as as losing electrons. Okay, so when say a metal, for example, or any substance is oxidized, it gains oxygen, but it also loses electrons. And on the other side of that, when a substance is reduced, i.e. it loses oxygen, it always gains electrons. So a good way to remember that is using a little mnemonic to know the difference between oxidation and reduction, and that mnemonic is oil rig. So oil rig stands for oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. Now remember, this is to do with electrons, so oxidation is loss of electrons, and reduction is gain of electrons. So what happens when a substance is reduced? It loses oxygen and it gains electrons. And to remember the difference between oxidation and reduction, electrons are lost in oxidation and electrons are gained in reduction. Now, which of these is true of acids? So they form hydrogen ions, H+, when they dissolve in water, and they have a pH of lower than 7. And for a reduction reaction to happen, if we take copper, for example, and we want that to be reduced, remember that's a loss of oxygen or a gain of electrons. So an example of that might be something like copper oxide plus hydrogen going to copper and water. We know it's been reduced because the copper oxide has been reduced to copper, it's lost electrons. Now, just remember that mnemonic again. It's oil rig. So oxidation is loss, reduction is gain of electrons. And which of the following happens to a substance when it is oxidized? Does it lose or gain electrons? So when it is oxidized, remember oil rig, oxidation is loss, it loses electrons. But on the other side of that, it loses electrons, but it actually gains oxygen.